The ice. It's singing. But it's not a song of peace, thought Anya, the deaf elder, feeling the deadly vibration beneath her feet. The earth was cracking, and the distant roar, muffled to her, but felt as a deep tremor in her chest, announced the arrival of the polar bears. But they were not her greatest fear. Rather, it was what was trapped beneath the white crust, awaiting its end. And what she would do to save them would change the tribe's soul forever. Anya felt the urgency of those tiny lives, a vibrant echo of despair, resonating within her very being, stronger than any cold or fear. Her eyes, accustomed to the white vastness, fixed on the direction from which the tremors came, towards the treacherous crevice that had swallowed the cubs. The village, a cluster of tents and smoke barely discernible in the icy mist, seemed oblivious to that melody of anguish. Or perhaps not oblivious, but deeply resigned. "It's madness, Anya!" Boris, the young hunter's voice, echoed in her mind, though she couldn't hear him. She read his lips, the concern etched on his face, his eyes seeking hers. "The bears are hungry, and the cubs. They're tigers. Nature takes its course." He gestured, his gloved hands trying to convey the gravity of the situation. Anya merely shook her head, a slow, firm gesture, her conviction unwavering. She saw not madness, but a duty, a connection that transcended the logic of survival. To her, the tiger was not just hunting and cold, but a living tapestry where every thread mattered. The cubs' lives were a precious thread, and the harmony of that place depended on all its inhabitants. She turned to her sled, sturdy and modified, built by her own hands. It was unusual. Its wider runners and a special platform allowed her to kneel, feeling the ice's vibrations with her hands and feet, as if the earth whispered secrets to her. The leather straps, worn but strong, and the dogs, domesticated wolves, waited with impatience and loyalty. As she secured the last supplies, a thick blanket, dried meat, an oil lamp, she felt the villagers' gaze, wrinkled faces, young mothers, men with axes. No one approached. The silence, for Anya, was not an absence of sound, but the heavy presence of disapproval and fear. It was the silence that said, "Don't go. Think of us. Think of yourself." But Anya couldn't not go. The image of the cubs, small and helpless beneath the ice, was a burden on her soul. She remembered the ancient stories told by her grandmother about the interconnectedness of all things, the wisdom of animals, and the responsibility of humans. Justice was not just for men, but for all life. With a sigh that turned into a cloud of vapor in the icy air, Anya climbed onto the sled. Her gloved fingers tightened on the reins, and the dogs, responding to a silent command only she could give, stretched out, ready. The sled glided smoothly over the packed snow, leaving the village behind. The wind whipped her face, but she didn't feel the cold, only the vibration of the ice beneath her. Every crack, ripple, or depression was a word in her silent language. She concentrated, feeling the invisible structure of the frozen world. The cubs were there, she knew, and the bears. They were too. The ice's song of peace had become a melody of danger, and Anya was the only one to hear it, the only one who would dare to dance to its deadly rhythm. Every step would be a gamble, but the lives of the little tigers were worth every risk. Anya glided, the sled an extension of her body, and the ice, an open page beneath her feet. She didn't hear the creak of wood or the whistle of the wind, but felt the pulse of the earth. Every tiny tremor, every subtle resonance was a word in her secret language. Her gloved fingers, gripping the reins, were equally attuned, catching the vibrations that rose through the sled runners. It was a silent symphony of cracks and compressions, a tactile map guiding her through the white vastness. Her loyal, silent dogs seemed to understand her concentration, pulling with a steady rhythm. The village had long disappeared, swallowed by the mist and distance, but Anya felt the responsibility only she could bear. The icy vastness was a challenge, but she felt the promise of life. As she advanced, the pattern of vibrations changed. The ice, once a relatively stable surface, began to whisper dangers. Small fissures, invisible to the naked eye beneath the layer of snow, revealed themselves to her as thin, trembling lines beneath her feet. She swerved, guiding the dogs with subtle movements of the reins and her body, avoiding traps that could swallow the entire sled. The temperature seemed to drop even further, and the air, dense and biting, burned in her lungs. But the cold was not her main enemy. It was the instability, the betrayal of the very ground that supported her, and the approaching threat, announced by deeper vibrations. Danger was a growing melody, and Anya needed to decipher it to survive. Then she felt it. It wasn't the ice cracking, but a weight, a heavy, irregular cadence that came from afar, but gained strength with each passing moment. The bears, their voice, to Anya, was a slow, powerful heartbeat, a rhythm that made the ice vibrate in a different, more menacing way. She could almost visualize their enormous paws stepping on the snow, their massive bodies moving with relentless hunger. The perception was so vivid that she squeezed her eyes shut for an instant, as if she could see them through the mist. A shiver, not from the cold, but from imminent danger, ran down her spine, an icy warning she couldn't ignore. Anya took a deep breath, the icy air filling her lungs with renewed determination. The image of the cubs, trapped and helpless, arose in her mind. She felt their fragility, a faint, desperate tremor beneath the ice, mixed with the dominant vibration of the predators. There was no time for fear. There was only the need to act, to use her gift to weave a path of hope. Her deafness, which many saw as a curse, was her greatest ally, a bridge to the tiger's secret language, a link to the life others ignored. She was the silent guardian, the only one capable of hearing the call of those small lives. With this certainty, Anya intensified her concentration. The sled now moved with more agility, zigzagging among the ice formations. She felt the cold air currents, the changes in snow density, every detail the environment offered. Her dogs, trained to follow her silent commands, and the energy of her body, responded with precision, turning left or right, speeding up or slowing down. It was a dangerous dance, a ballet on a crystal stage about to shatter. With each passing moment, the bear's vibration grew stronger, more present, mixing with the faint call of the cubs. The tension in the air was almost palpable, a premonition. Anya knew the hardest part was yet to come, the crevice, and more importantly, how to lure the bears away without becoming prey herself. She thought of the village, of Boris's and the others' worried faces. They wouldn't understand the complexity of her mission, the delicacy of each movement, the ancestral wisdom that guided her. To them, it was madness. To her, it was the only truth. The connection between all lives, the responsibility to protect the most vulnerable, echoed in her heart, stronger than the cold, stronger than the danger. She was the bridge between despair and hope, and she would not fail. Anya, her mind focused and her body in unison with the sled, felt that the crevice was not far. The ice beneath her became a more complex tapestry of sensations, a vibratory fabric that told a story of danger and despair. The cub's vibrations, once a distant whisper, were now a clearer lament, an echo of fear and cold that pierced her soul. She could almost feel the tremor of their small bodies, their gasping breaths, their agonizing weight. The mental image that formed was of a dark abyss, a hole in the white vastness where life in its most fragile form struggled to persist. Her eyes, accustomed to deciphering the tiger's secrets, scanned the horizon, seeking visual confirmation of what her feet already told her with painful clarity. Suddenly, a new and powerful wave of vibrations hit her, making the sled vibrate beneath her. It wasn't the ice, nor the cubs. It was the weight, the brute force of the polar bears, now much closer than at any previous moment. The ground trembled with an intensity that made Anya's heart beat faster, not from dread, but from a sharp alert, a cold adrenaline that propelled her. She felt the cadence of their paws, the dragging of their heavy bodies over the snow and ice, an inexorable march. There were several, she realized, and they were moving with surprising speed for such large creatures driven by hunger. The scent, which for her was an absence of sound, but an almost physical presence in the dense biting air, was of wild meat and fur, an omen of a hunt that grew stronger and stronger. Finally, through the mist that danced with the wind, the crevice revealed itself. A dark, irregular scar on the white skin of the world, deep and treacherous. Anya guided the sled with precision to a safe edge, stopping at a respectful distance. She dismounted, kneeling in the snow, her bare hands touching the ice to better feel the urgency of those small lives. The cub's vibrations were now almost desperate, a chorus of tiny tremors that reached her directly. She leaned over, peering inside. Down below, in a precarious niche of ice and rock, 3 small Siberian tiger cubs huddled, their wide blue eyes filled with fear and cold, their striped coats a fragile contrast against the ice. One of them let out a faint meow, inaudible to Anya, but which she felt as an excruciating squeeze in her chest, a silent plea. Anya stood up, her face marked by concern, but also by an iron resolve that guided her. The bears were alarmingly close. The vibrations of their footsteps were constant, and she could feel the proximity of their massive bodies, the urgency of their hunger. She knew she had to act fast, that every second was precious. She looked around, searching the icy landscape for a solution, a path. Her eyes scanned the ice formations, the visible and invisible cracks she felt beneath her feet. The taiga, always an open book to her, now needed to be read with deadly urgency. The weakness of the ice, which was a constant danger to her, could paradoxically be her greatest weapon. She returned to the sled, taking one of the bags of dried meat she had prepared in advance. It wasn't much, but it was enough for what she had in mind. With calculated movements, she began to create a trail, throwing small pieces of meat in a specific direction, leading away from the crevice and the cubs. Each piece was bait, a silent and irresistible invitation to the hungry predators. She felt the bears' vibrations intensify as they detected the scent, altering their route, following the trail she left with calculated hope. It was a dangerous game, a gamble against hunger and animal intelligence, but Anya trusted her unique perception and her ability to manipulate the environment to her advantage. Anya continued, guiding the sled in a wide arc, leading the bears to an area she knew to be more unstable, a labyrinth of cracked ice and deep snow. She felt the fragility of the ground beneath the sled runners, the finer, more dangerous vibrations that indicated the proximity of imminent collapse. The bears, in turn, were now so close that Anya could feel the warmth of their bodies, the heavy breathing that made the air vibrate with their presence. She couldn't hear them, but their presence was overwhelming, a wave of wild, predatory energy. One of them, the largest and most imposing, was ahead, its footsteps rumbling on the ice like ancestral drums, each vibration a warning. Anya knew that confrontation was imminent, that there was no more time for hesitation. She had to be quick, precise, and use all her wisdom. The fate of the cubs, and her own, depended on that crucial moment. The village so distant seemed like a dream, but the promise of life she carried in her heart was the most real of truths. The largest bear, a mountain of white fur and muscle, stopped a few meters from Anya, its footsteps rumbling on the ice like ancestral drums, each vibration a warning. The elder could feel the animal's heavy breathing, the heat emanating from its colossal body, even through the icy air. There was no sound for her ears, But the predator's presence was overwhelming, a wave of wild, predatory energy that made the very ice beneath her feet vibrate with an almost painful intensity. The other bears, a little further back, also stopped, sniffing the air, hunger etched in every movement. Anya felt no paralyzing fear, but a strange calm, a clarity that only the proximity of extreme danger could bring. Her eyes, which had seen so many winters and overcome so many adversities, fixed on the imposing bear. She saw not an enemy to be destroyed, but a creature of the taiga, driven by its own need to survive. And deep down, she knew that the life of each, predator or prey, was interconnected. But the cubs needed her. Her feet, her gloved fingers, her knees kneeling on the sled's platform, everything was attuned to the ice. She felt the web of cracks and weak points that the bears, with their weight and momentum, did not perceive in the same way. The spot she had chosen to lure them was a subtle trap, an area where the ice was thinner, more prone to give way under pressure. It was a calculated risk, a dance with nature itself. With an almost imperceptible movement of the reins, Enya guided her dogs, not to flee, but to position herself. She needed the largest bear to advance a little further, to the center of the unstable area. The animal, drawn by the trail of dried meat and the elder's presence, took a few more hesitant steps. Its small, dark eyes fixed on her. Each step was a miniature earthquake for Anya. She felt the ice groan, a deep and prolonged vibration that rose through her legs. Then, Anya did what she had to do. Instead of retreating, she propelled the sled slightly forward, making a quick and precise maneuver that created a disturbance in the ice at the exact point she felt was the most fragile. It wasn't a violent impact, but a break in balance. A catalyst. The ice responded with a loud crack, inaudible to Anya, but which she felt as thunder beneath her feet. A deep, wide fissure opened before the largest bear, rapidly extending in a semicircle. The bear stopped abruptly, its front paws mere inches from the newly formed crevice. The vibration of its body shifted from aggression to surprise and caution. It took a step back, feeling the ground's instability. The barrier of cracked ice, though not an abyss, was enough to make it hesitate, to break its momentum. The other bears, sensing the danger, also stopped, their growls silent to Anya, but the vibration of their frustration was clear. Anya didn't lose a second. With the temporary barrier created, she turned the sled with agility and propelled it back towards the cub's crevice. Her dogs, understanding the urgency, pulled with all their might. Anya's heart pounded, not from the exertion, but from the hope that ignited in her chest. She had bought time. Now it was time to rescue those small lives. Anya propelled the sled with urgency. The ice barrier was fragile, a temporary reprieve, but time was as relentless as the bear's hunger. Her dogs ran swiftly, the runners cutting through the snow. In moments, she was back at the crevice, the dark abyss. She dismounted quickly, her feet seeking the ice, her hands touching the surface to feel the cub's pulse. The vibrations were a desperate chorus, stronger, closer, a silent lament that pierced her soul. She knelt at the edge, peering inside. The 3 Siberian tiger cubs huddled one on top of the other, trembling. Their eyes showed weariness, an icy resignation. One of them, the smallest, was on an ice ledge further down, almost out of reach, the edge visibly thin and unstable. Anya felt an icy grip. It was the turning point, the unexpected complication. The ice beneath the smallest cub whispered danger, cracks deepening. She couldn't simply reach out. The ledge would give way. She needed to descend, but the crevice was treacherous. Any wrong move could send her tumbling. The bears, their vibration previously contained, intensified, a heavy and relentless rhythm. They were testing the limits. Time was running out. With silent determination, Anya began to prepare. She removed her fur coat for more freedom. Her nimble fingers tied a sturdy rope to the sled, the other end to her waist, ensuring support. Her dogs watched, quiet, With an intelligence that went beyond training, she leaned over the crevice, testing the ice with her hands, feeling every minimal instability. She needed to be quick and precise, without errors. With extreme care, Anya began to descend into the crevice. There were no steps, only small ledges and cracks to support her feet and hands, seeking perfect balance. Every movement was calculated, every muscle tense, as she moved with surprising agility for her age, defying gravity and danger. Her feet, protected by thick socks, were her sharpest eyes, feeling the ice's texture, the solidity of each foothold. She felt the biting cold, but the image of the cubs propelled her with soul strength. The ice's vibration beneath her was a constant alert, a map of invisible dangers only she could decipher. Finally, she reached the ledge where the smallest cub was. She extended her hand, her gloved fingers touching the soft, icy fur of the little tiger, which shivered. It let out a faint meow, a sound she felt as a vibration, its blue eyes fixed on her, a mix of fear and faint hope. Anya picked it up with the utmost care, cradling it against her chest, feeling the fragile warmth of its body, a small flame of life amidst the ice. The other two cubs, seeing her and feeling her vibration, began to move, desperately trying to reach her. But the ledge where they were was even more precarious, higher and further away. Suddenly, a stronger, more urgent vibration ran through the ice beneath Anya's feet. It wasn't the bears, which still echoed in the distance, but a deep crack coming from within. The crevice, a lament of the ice. The ledge where the other two cubs were began to visibly give way, a web of cracks spreading rapidly like frozen veins. The turning point deepened, threatening to swallow the remaining cubs. Anya felt despair grow, a lump in her throat. But there was no time to hesitate. She needed to act, and fast, before the crevice took those small lives forever. Her eyes widened, her mind working feverishly to find a solution amidst the silent chaos, while the cub in her arms trembled. Anya, with the smallest cub cradled against her chest, felt the increasing tremor of the ledge above. There was no time to think, only to feel and act. Her feet, even through her thick socks, felt the ice's agony, each tiny crack opening, each silent snap announcing the imminent collapse. The other two cubs, with their wide eyes, meowed again, a sound that, for Anya, was a vibration of pure terror. She couldn't climb back up the same way she came down. The ice was giving way too fast. The rope, still tied to her waist, and the sled, was her only link to the relative safety of the surface. With a swift and determined movement, Anya released the cub she was carrying, carefully placing it in a small, more stable recess in the ice wall, protecting it with her own body. Her eyes conveyed a silent promise of return. Then she turned to the crumbling ledge. The ice beneath her feet vibrated with the bear's urgency, who now seemed to be testing the barrier she had created, their steps more audacious, closer. Time was an enemy as relentless as the cold. Anya pulled the rope, calculating the tension and distance. She needed support, something that wouldn't give way. Her eyes scanned the crevice wall, searching for a protrusion, a more solid crack, anything. Her feet felt a small rock ledge, almost invisible, but firm. With surprising agility, she propelled herself, using the rope as a pendulum, and reached the rock, bracing herself firmly. Now she was in a slightly higher, but still precarious position, a few meters from the trapped cubs. The ledge where the two cubs were swayed dangerously. Anya reached out, but the distance was too great, and the risk of further destabilizing the ice was immense. She needed a different method. Her eyes found a piece of sturdy cloth that was attached to her belt, used for cleaning her tools. Without hesitation, she untied it, fastening it firmly to the end of the rope still in her hand. With precision, she cast the rope with the cloth towards the cubs, hoping one of them could grasp it. The first cub, the closest to the edge, hesitated for a second, fear in its eyes. But the vibration of the ice beneath it, the warning of collapse, was stronger than its fear. With a desperate meow, it stretched out and managed to bite the cloth, clinging to it with its small claws. Anya felt the tug, the small life depending on her. With strength and delicacy, she began to pull it, guiding it off the ledge that was now disintegrating into small pieces of ice falling into the darkness. The cub was carefully hoisted, its eyes fixed on hers, until she could reach it and cradle it in her free arm. Now, only one remained. The ice beneath the last cub was cracking at an alarming rate. The ledge was almost completely disintegrated. Anya felt panic, but transformed it into pure concentration. She repositioned the rope, casting it again, this time with more urgency. The last cub, seeing its sibling safe, didn't hesitate. It leapt for the cloth with a courage that surprised Anya, clinging with all its might. The ice beneath it gave way at that very instant, collapsing with a silent crash that Anya felt as a blow to her chest. By a hair's breadth, it had been saved. With the two cubs now safe in her arms, one in each, Anya felt a momentary, deep and exhausting relief. But there was no time for rest. The bear's vibration was now a constant roar beneath her feet, an overwhelming presence indicating that the ice barrier she had created was at its limit. They were approaching, and the hunger in their bodies was an almost palpable force. Anya needed to get out of the crevice, and fast. The climb would be even more challenging, with 3 precious lives depending on her every move. The cold cut her skin, but the warmth of the small bodies against hers was a vivid reminder of the promise she had made to the tiger. She looked up to the edge of the crevice, where her dogs waited, sensing the urgency of the situation. The next stage would be the most dangerous. Anya looked up to the edge of the crevice, where her dogs waited, sensing the urgency of the situation. The next stage would be the most dangerous. With the 2 cubs cradled in her arms, one in each, she felt the weight of responsibility, but also a renewed strength. The cold cut the exposed skin of her face, but the warmth of the small bodies against hers was a vivid reminder of the promise she had made to the tiger. She needed to climb, and fast. Her feet, her sharpest eyes, groped the ice, seeking the footholds that had brought her there. The rock ledge she had used to propel herself was a starting point. With concentrated effort, Anya began the ascent. Each movement calculated not to destabilize the cubs. The rope, still tied to her waist, and the sled above, was her lifeline. She pulled, feeling the tension, the support of the dogs who, silently, adjusted their positions, ready for the command she couldn't give with her voice, but which they felt in her energy. The ice beneath her feet vibrated with the bear's urgency, a constant roar that now seemed to echo from all directions. The barrier she had created was giving way. She felt the cracks deepening, the ice structure trembling under the predator's weight and persistence. There was no more time for subtleties. It was a race against imminent collapse. Anya reached the recess where the 3rd cub was. With a swift but gentle movement, she picked it up, cradling it alongside the other 2. Now, with all 3 cubs in her arms, the climb became even more challenging. The extra weight and the need to protect the small lives made her slower, more vulnerable. But Anya's determination was unwavering. She was a mountain of silent strength, moved by an ancestral love for life. Her gloved fingers gripped the small ice protrusions, seeking support. The dogs, above, felt the change in the rope's weight and pulled harder, responding to their mistress's silent despair. Anya felt the pull, the loyal help of her companions, and this propelled her. Meter by meter she climbed, the cubs trembling in her arms, but quiet, as if sensing the gravity of the situation. Suddenly, a stronger, more violent vibration than the previous ones ran through the ice. A deep crack, inaudible, but which Anya felt as an electric shock. The ice barrier separating the bears from the crevice had given way. The largest bear, she felt, was now on the edge, its colossal weight making the ground tremble with renewed fury. It had found a passage, or simply forced one. The scent of predator was now overwhelming, an almost physical presence that enveloped her. Anya knew she no longer had seconds but instants. She propelled herself with a strength she didn't know she possessed, using the rope and the dog's help to hoist herself the last few meters. Her muscles screamed, but she ignored the pain. Her face was contorted in a supreme effort, her eyes fixed on the crevice's edge, on the promise of safety. With a last, desperate pull, she managed to toss the cubs up, one at a time, to the dogs who received them with curious and gentle muzzles. Then, with the help of the rope and a final push, Anya hoisted herself out of the crevice, exhausted, but with the 3 cubs safe beside her. She barely had time to compose herself. The vibration of the largest bear was just a few meters away. It had crossed the barrier and was advancing. The other bears followed, their footsteps echoing on the ice. Anya knew that the final confrontation was inevitable. She needed a new strategy, one that used the environment's fragility to her advantage, not just to delay, but to drive the predators away once and for all. Her eyes swept the landscape, searching for a solution, an opening in the white immensity. The lives of the cubs and her own depended on her next and most audacious maneuver. Anya didn't hesitate. With the 3 cubs nestled in the sled, protected by fur blankets, she felt the vibration of the largest bear approaching, a colossal mass of hunger and instinct. Its other companions followed, the earth trembling under the weight of each. There was no time to retreat or for a prolonged escape. She needed something definitive, something that would not only delay them, but make them reconsider, that would drive them away from that place forever. Her feet, her sharpest eyes, groped the ice, reading the invisible landscape of cracks and points of fragility. There was an area further ahead, a vast expanse of ice that seemed solid at first glance, but which Anya felt to be a web of thin layers over an abyss of frozen water, a natural trap she had avoided her entire life. Now, this trap would become her ally. With a silent command, a vibration of urgency that her dogs felt and responded to, Anya propelled the sled, not away from the bears, but towards that treacherous area. She knew she was risking everything, but the cubs' lives and the wisdom that the tiger demanded balance propelled her. The largest bear, noticing the movement, accelerated, its footsteps rumbling like thunder, the vibration of its fury growing. Anya, however, remained calm, her eyes fixed on the ice horizon, her feet feeling every nuance of the ground. She threw the last remaining pieces of dried meat, scattering them in a trail that led directly into the heart of the unstable area. It was an irresistible invitation to the hungry predators. The bears fell for the bait. The largest of them, with its imposing mass, advanced with veracity following the trail, its heavy footsteps now resonating on ice that Anya felt groan. She knew she was at the limit. The critical point was near. With a quick and precise maneuver, she turned the sled sharply, moving away from the most fragile area, while the largest bear, driven by hunger, continued to advance. The instant the bear reached the center of that vast web of thin ice, Anya did what she had to do. She used the weight of the sled and her own body, propelling it forcefully at an adjacent point, creating a calculated disturbance. The ice responded with a deep, prolonged crack, inaudible to her, but which rose through her feet like an earthquake. A vast area of ice, previously seemingly solid, began to give way. It wasn't a sudden and violent collapse, but a gradual fragmentation, a break into countless pieces that separated, creating a labyrinth of unstable blocks and frozen water. The largest bear stopped abruptly, its fury replaced by an instinct of self-preservation. It felt the ground beneath its paws become treacherous, every movement a risk. The other bears, coming behind, also stopped, growling, but not daring to advance. The barrier was now impassable, not by an abyss, but by a vast expanse of broken ice, too unstable to support their colossal weight. Anya watched, feeling the bear's vibration decrease in intensity, transforming from aggression to caution and finally to retreat. They turned, their massive bodies moving slowly away, seeking a safer route, away from that trap of broken ice. A silent sigh of relief escaped her lips. She had succeeded. The cubs were safe, and the bears, though hungry, had been driven away without violence, without pain, simply by the wisdom of manipulating the environment. With the bears finally moving away, Anya turned the sled. The journey back to the village would be long and arduous, but she was no longer alone. The 3 tiger cubs, now calmer, emitted small vibrations of life in her chest, a vivid reminder of the promise fulfilled. The tiger had tested her strength, her faith, and she had responded with the purest form of altruism. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, a silent spectacle that Anya felt in her soul. She had proven that true strength lay not in brutality, but in the ability to feel, protect, and fight for what others considered insignificant. Even in the frozen heart of the world, the village now seemed closer, not by physical distance, but by the hope she carried. Anya felt a deep weariness in her bones, every muscle protesting against the superhuman effort. The adrenaline that had propelled her during the rescue and confrontation with the bears began to subside, leaving behind an exhaustion that weighed like the surrounding ice mountains. But in her arms, the 3 Siberian tiger cubs, nestled in fur blankets on the sled, were a gentle warmth, a living promise that pushed away the cold of fatigue. She felt them, small flickering flames of life, and this vibration was her greatest reward. The journey back was different from the outward one. There was no longer the desperate urgency of an imminent rescue, but the solemnity of a return with an unexpected treasure. Her dogs pulled the sled with a steady rhythm, their footsteps firm on the ice, as if they understood the importance of the cargo. Anya, sitting on the sled with the cubs carefully arranged in front of her, allowed herself a moment to feel the environment in a new way. The ice beneath her feet was no longer a treacherous enemy, but a path she had mastered, an ally that connected her to the earth. She felt the wind's vibrations changing, the promise of an approaching blizzard, but also the familiarity of the terrain leading her home. Her gloved fingers touched the soft fur of one of the cubs, which moved slightly, emitting a vibration of contentment. A faint, tired, but genuine smile appeared on her cold, cracked lips. The village had seen her departure as madness, a recklessness driven by a compassion they couldn't understand amidst their own struggle for survival. She remembered the worried glances of some, the disbelieving headshakes of others, the words that, though inaudible, she felt as an echo of skepticism. But Anya never doubted. Her conviction was stronger than the thickest ice, deeper than the darkest crevice. She knew that all life was sacred, a link in the tiger's great web, and that true strength lay in protecting this interconnectedness. Now she returned with the proof of her faith. How would the village react? This was the new vibration that troubled her, a social and emotional obstacle rising on the horizon. Would they accept these small, wild creatures into their midst? Would they understand the value of an act that seemed to defy the logic of survival? Anya knew that the most difficult journey might not be the round trip across the ice, but the one to rekindle empathy and belief within her own community. The sun had already completely hidden itself, and the darkness of the polar night began to envelop the landscape, dotted only by stars that shone with an icy intensity. In the distance, a faint yellowish light began to emerge, a luminous vibration that Anya felt even before clearly seeing it. The village bonfires, a beacon of warmth and humanity in the icy vastness. Her dogs quickened their pace, sensing the proximity of home. Anya hugged the cubs in her arms, a gesture of protection and affection. Her eyes, though tired, shone with a silent resolve. She was not just bringing back 3 lives, she was bringing a message, a reminder that even in the frozen heart of the world, compassion and altruism could flourish and warm souls. The village was approaching, and with it, the moment of truth. The lights of the bonfires flickered, revealing the tents. Anya felt the dogs' vibration on the ice, the rhythm of their return. The icy air carried the smell of smoke and more human presence. She hugged the cubs, feeling the warmth of their small lives, silent proof of the journey. When the sled stopped, silence was the first response. Not the icy silence of the taiga, but expectation and confusion. Villagers emerged, faces wrinkled with surprise. Anya dismounted, her movements slow, exhaustion weighing her down, yet with dignity. In her arms, the 3 tiger cubs, wrapped in furs, were almost invisible, but their presence was felt. Their gazes were a mix of incredulity and astonishment. She felt the vibration of their emotions. Old and young approached, hesitant steps, eyes fixed on Anya and her cargo. Mikhail, the respected elder, was the first, his face perplexed. He gestured, hands questioning, eyes seeking explanation. Anya, without words, unfolded the furs, revealing the 3 small tigers. Blue eyes, still closed, contrasted with their striped fur. A shiver ran through the crowd, not of fear, but of admiration and shame. They had considered the cubs lost, a madness, and there stood Anya, the underestimated elder, bringing them back. Lyra, a kind young woman, broke the silence. She knelt, teary-eyed, extending a hand to touch a cub. The vibration of her compassion was a balm. Others followed, curiosity turning into tenderness. Children peeked, their eyes wide with fascination. The vibration of pure, childlike joy began to spread. Mikhail, still silent, observed. He saw Anya's exhaustion, but also her resolve and peace. He felt the vibration of the life she had brought, not just for the cubs, but for the village. Her altruism and bravery broke through the pragmatism and despair of winter. He remembered the ancestral words about the interconnectedness of life, long forgotten. Anya raised her gaze, meeting Mikhail's. There was no accusation, only wisdom and a silent invitation. He nodded, his expression softening. He indicated that the cubs should be taken to the warmth of the communal tent, and that Anya should be cared for. The vibration of acceptance, respect, and renewed human connection filled the icy air. The climax was not a roar, but a collective sigh. The emotional and social barriers, stronger than any ice crevice, began to melt. The village, previously focused only on individual survival, now saw the beauty and strength of Anya's altruism and empathy. She brought not just the cubs, but a flame of hope and a reminder. True wealth lies in protecting and valuing all life. The cold was still relentless, but the village's hearts, finally, began to warm. The vibration of acceptance, once a timid whisper, now resonated like a chorus, filling the icy air with a new melody of hope. Mikhail, the elder, whose wrinkles deepened with the wisdom of winters, gestured for Anya to be taken to his tent, the warmest in the village. His eyes conveyed not just respect, but a deep reverence for the woman who had defied the logic of survival to follow the voice of her heart. As Anya was carefully supported, with Lyra by her side, the tiger cubs became the center of unprecedented attention. The children, previously curious, now approached with an almost religious reverence, their small fingers pointing to the dark stripes on the soft fur. Lyra, with her innate kindness, supervised the preparation of a warm and safe bed for the little ones, using the softest furs and fluffiest wool. A woman, who had lost her own litter to the harsh cold the previous winter, offered milk from her goat, a gesture of compassion that spread like a warming fire. The vibration of solidarity was palpable, a stark contrast to the initial indifference. The village men, previously skeptical, watched with a mix of admiration and a pang of shame. They had underestimated Anya, the deaf one who saw the world in a way they never could. Now, they saw in her not a madwoman, but a heroine, a guardian of the life that the tiger so cherished. The story of how she had manipulated the ice, driving the bears away without shedding a drop of blood, spread quickly, told in reverent whispers, each detail amplified by admiration. Anya, in her tent, felt these vibrations of respect and recognition. There was no pride in her heart, only the quiet satisfaction of having fulfilled her mission. She knew that the true battle was not against the bears, but against the hardening of hearts, against the blindness of the soul that the struggle for survival could bring. The next day, a council was convened. Mikhail, his voice choked with emotion, spoke of ancestral wisdom, of the interconnectedness of all lives in the taiga. He reminded everyone that their community's strength lay not just in its ability to hunt or withstand the cold, but in its humanity, in its capacity to feel and protect the most vulnerable. Anya, sitting in silence, felt every word, every vibration of agreement that ran through the ground. The tiger cubs, for now, would be cared for by the village, fed and protected until they were strong enough to return to nature, not as pets, but as sacred guests, a living reminder of the tiger's promise of balance. The main conflicts had resolved in a way no one could have foreseen. The cubs were safe and would be nurtured, the threat of the bears averted without violence, and most importantly, the community had rediscovered the essence of its own humanity. Anya's journey had been a catalyst, a breath of life that had melted the layers of ice in the hardest hearts, revealing hidden tenderness. The Yakutian village, previously focused on mere existence, now flourished with a new purpose, a new faith in the strength of altruism and the connection that united all living beings. The cold remained relentless, but the flame of compassion burned stronger than ever, warming every tent, every soul, preparing them for the challenges yet to come, but with the unwavering certainty that, together and with open hearts, they could overcome any winter. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, as Yakutia plunged deeper into winter's icy embrace. Yet, the village was no longer the same. The seed of altruism planted by Anya, watered by gratitude and astonishment, had germinated in fertile ground. The tiger cubs, now with their eyes open and curiously exploring the communal tent's interior, were living proof of the transformation. Lyra, with her sweetness and patience, had become the primary caregiver, her days filled with the task of feeding and soothing the small felines. She watched them grow, their agile movements and soft growls, and felt the joy of every small victory, every step towards their innate strength. The village children, previously fearful of the unknown and instructed to avoid danger, now saw in the cubs a wonder, a tangible and vibrant link to the wild nature that surrounded them. They approached with respectful curiosity, learning about life and interdependence in a way no elder could have taught with words or hunts alone. The vibration of their innocence and admiration was a balm for the community's soul. Anya, in turn, had become an even more revered figure. Her deafness, once seen as a barrier that isolated her, was now understood as the source of her unique wisdom, a gift that connected her to the world in a way others couldn't even imagine. People came to her, not just to thank her, but to seek advice about the treacherous ice, about animal migratory patterns, about the subtle signs of the taiga that only she could feel through her feet. She would sit in her tent, often with her eyes closed, her bare feet on the fur floor, feeling the vibrations of the outside world, translating them into practical advice and deep reflections on the intrinsic balance of all life. Mikhail, the elder, often visited her not to question or doubt, but to listen, to learn from the depth of her perception. He saw in Anya the personification of the ancestral wisdom they had, somehow forgotten in their incessant struggle for survival. Together, they guided the village into a new era of respect for nature, mutual solidarity, and a deeper understanding of their own place in the great cycle of life. The community learned that true strength lay not just in its ability to hunt or withstand the cold, but in its humanity and its capacity to care. When spring finally began to whisper its arrival, melting the first layers of snow and ice and revealing the dormant earth, the tiger cubs were already strong and independent enough to return to their wild home. The decision was made in a community council, not with sadness at their departure, but with the certainty that it was the right path, an act of respect for the tiger itself. The entire village gathered at the forest's edge, watching in silence as Anya, with a last affectionate touch to each, set them free. They hesitated for a moment, small striped forms against the receding white, before disappearing into the tiger's vastness, a silent and majestic return to their wild heritage. That day marked not only the cubs' farewell, but the rebirth of a spirit in the village. The story of Anya and the tigers became a legend told from generation to generation, a vivid reminder that true strength lies not in domination, but in empathy, in the courage to protect the vulnerable, and in a deep connection with the natural world. The Yakutian village, in its frozen heart, had found a warmth that not even the harshest winter could extinguish. Anya continued to live among them, her feet still reading the silent voices of the earth, her eyes, though old, shining with the light of a wisdom that had saved not just 3 lives, but the soul of an entire community. And so, in the heart of Yakutia, where life was a constant battle against the cold, Anya's story became a beacon of hope, proving that true strength lies in the ability to feel, protect, and fight for what others consider insignificant, even in the frozen heart of the world. And that compassion was, in fact, the most powerful weapon against the indifference of the ice. The years unfolded like layers of snow over the taiga, each winter bringing its own challenges, but the Yakutian village was no longer the same. The seed of altruism planted by Anya, watered by gratitude and astonishment, had germinated in fertile ground, transforming the inner landscape of each inhabitant. The story of the tiger cubs, the broken ice, and Anya's silent courage was told and retold around the bonfires, not as a distant legend, but as a living guide for existence. The cold was still relentless, yes, but the flame of compassion burned stronger than ever, warming every tent, every soul. Anya, now with her hair completely white, but with the same serenity on her time-worn face, continued to be the community's silent compass. Her feet, which felt the tiniest vibrations, were like deep roots in the earth, connecting her to a world most had forgotten. She would spend hours in her tent, or sitting on the hardened snow, her eyes closed, feeling the tiger's pulse. People came to her with their concerns, no longer just about the ice or the animals, but about disputes between neighbors, about the sadness that sometimes settled in hearts. Anya, without words, but with gentle gestures and a deep gaze, offered advice that resonated with ancestral wisdom, reminding everyone of the interconnectedness of all things. The children, who one day peeked at the tiger cubs with curiosity and admiration, now grew up with an innate understanding of life's delicate balance. They learned to hunt and survive, but also to respect every creature, to listen to the wind's whispers and the ground's vibrations. Lyra, who had become a strong and wise woman, continued to personify kindness, caring for the elders and the youngest, always with Anya's lessons in her heart. She taught the children to draw the tigers in the snow, to feel the forest's rhythm, to understand that strength came not from domination, but from harmony. Mikhail the elder, now more stooped by the weight of years, but with a renewed spirit, often sat beside Anya in silence. He didn't need words to understand the depth of her perception. Her presence was a constant reminder that his people's true wealth was not in their possessions, but in their capacity to feel, to protect, and to value all life. Together, they were the pillars of a community that had found a new purpose, a new faith in the strength of altruism and the connection that united all living beings. One day, at the height of a particularly harsh winter, when snow fell without respite and the wind howled like a hungry wolf, a young hunter returned to the village, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and reverence. He had seen in the distance, in the white vastness, a majestic Siberian tiger, accompanied by two almost adult cubs. There was no doubt. It was one of Anya's tigers, now a father, perpetuating the life she had saved. The vibration of the news ran through the village like an electric shock, not of dread, but of deep joy and pride. Anya, in her tent, felt the change in the air, the collective vibration of ecstasy. A soft, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. She knew. Her feet had felt the return of wildlife, the complete cycle. Anya's story was not just about saving cubs. It was about rekindling belief in something greater than mere survival. It was about the truth that compassion could melt the thickest ice, and that the deepest human connection manifested in the ability to protect and value all life, even in the frozen heart of the world. The Yakutian village, in its eternal winter, had found its own summer of spirit, a promise that life, in all its forms, would always find a way